As I said to you at the start of this program today, we worried greatly. Well, no, we're not worried. That's not fair. We are nightly assaulted, daily reminded of that war's a bad thing. So whether it's Ukraine and Russia, or whether it's, in this particular case, Hamas and Israel and the Gaza Strip, the reality is that innocents suffer, and children in particular. And for some strange reason, we tend to get very, very upset. We are made to feel very upset by the mainstream media, by the images that they present, about children dying and getting mutilated and being killed in other countries. But when it comes to New Zealand, we sort of, oh, gosh. And they won't even feature on the front page of newspapers anymore because it's become such a sort of passé trend. Joining us to talk about the latest case and why New Zealanders don't seem to care anymore is the Chief Executive Officer of Child Matters, Jane Searle. Jane, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you on.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for having me again.
Listen, this most recent case that the New Zealand Herald have highlighted this morning in Christchurch of two women and one man essentially torturing a young boy for, it would appear, years, leading to charges. And you wonder how that could happen in New Zealand. And yet we know how that can happen because we've been just watching children tortured, like Malachi Subich and Baby Roo and a whole series of others over the years. And Oranga Tamariki, it would appear, knows them all. So when, and I'm sure in this particular case too, when all the information comes out, we all discover that Oranga Tamariki is aware of the fact that those families and those children have been at danger, and they are under, in many cases, the active management or supervision of. Can I ask you, as somebody who will not be torturing 4-year-old children or killing them, why Oranga Tamariki knows but doesn't appear to intervene in these multitude of cases?
Well, this is what we've known for some time, Michael, there. Oranga Tamariki is an essential service, but it's not fit for purpose. So after the death of Malachi in November 2021, there was 3 reports done on that. And those reports all had similar findings, and there's nothing wrong with the findings or the recommendations. They were inconsistency across sites. They were too high workload, lack of resourcing. We need more training for social workers, more coordination with the community. We've known this for a very long time, and yet it's not what we need to do. That's the problem. It's actually doing it.
But okay, you're right. We've had numerous reviews. Every time a child is killed, mutilated, tortured, there's an inquiry. They all say the same thing. Why has there been no action at all of consequence over the last decade, Jane?
I think that we just haven't prioritised it. So while it's the issue isn't just a government issue, because government agencies like the New Zealand Police and Oranga Tamariki can't do this in isolation, we need to do it at a community level. It is the responsibility of government to set up the framework from which community then put their response to. And it is the responsibility of government to lead this. We simply haven't had the prioritisation of this that we need. So if you even look coming into elections, we may talk about child poverty a little bit in the last 2 elections, but we really don't talk about these issues. And actually it needs to be front and centre because as we know, we talk about the children that die. This particular case that was highlighted by the Herald is a child who hasn't died but has suffered significant trauma in every respect, life-changing injuries. There are hundreds and hundreds of cases like that we never hear about. So we need to have this discussion. And the problem with Wellington, I think, is often they'll tell us what the new shiny thing is they're going to implement under their watch. But we never have honest discussions about how far we've failed so far.
No, we don't. And you're right. The non-accident injuries, there are, I think I read about 1,000 a year. So non-accident injuries dealt with in the New Zealand hospital system is over 1,000 a year. Do you have statistics on that too?
Well, we don't know the level of injuries, and we won't because it's so underreported. So if you look at this little case that we're talking about at the moment, that wee boy is 4 years old, and he's only just come, the offenders have only just been arrested when he was 4 and then been brought to account. So this is what happens. It goes unnoticed for so long, and there's so many cases like that. If you go right back to 91 to Celia Whittaker, there's so many cases between then and now that are exactly the same. So the issue is it's underreported. We know that Oranga Tamariki get about 70,000 reports of concern a year. We know that is the tip of the iceberg.
Okay. But the other thing that I commented upon, actually, Jane, to my wife, a couple of days ago at night, we were watching another example of this, or it might have been Baby Roo, actually. And I was saying, do you know, I never see anybody prosecuted for all of these non-accident injuries, the one that maim and injure to the point that you require hospitalisation. I never see a court case around it. This will be probably one of the first, and this is extreme. But there don't appear to be any ongoing consequences for these events.
There is prosecutions, and child abuse teams or child protection teams in the police stations across the country deal with these cases all the time. Assaults on a child, these sorts of offences that are serious offences but are not life-threatening, for example. But none of that's reported. I mean, even in a case like this one, I was asked by a reporter yesterday, did this shock you? And I said, no, it saddens me, but it doesn't shock me because anyone who's worked frontline has seen cases like this in their career. So what we need to do is have a better understanding of actually how prevalent it is, because that's how we're going to get a little bit of pressure on making sure we need the resourcing where it needs to be.
Okay, but how many more resources do they need? I mean, I'm pretty sure that I could itemise, if I just gathered the existing information between, I don't know, Rama Tamariki, the Ministry of Social Development and the police, maybe the schools, every feral family in New Zealand. I would know. It's pretty clear. I mean, that evidence simply just exists across a range of particular government departments. So given that does, why is the integration of that intelligence to go, do you know what? That family there, institutional, it's dysfunctional, there's generations of abuse in that family, children come out of there, we need to do something about it now. Why isn't there that level of planning?
That's $1 million question. So we know, for example, that most children are born in a hospital in New Zealand, and there's been many cases where hospitals have made reports of concern before the child's even left the home, and then that child has ended up being injured or dying. So you're absolutely right. These things should be linked. The key to this is the prevention of intervening early, and the community has been asking that for years. But it seems that the mechanisms of government are slow moving and slow to change. So it's not rocket science to work out. We need better coordination of the information, better coordination from government agencies. And if we do that, we're never going to solve the issue of child abuse in this country. I've been asked this a lot in the last few weeks. We won't ever solve it, but we can change it, and so the statistics are improving. And if we do that, we'll be saving lives. So it's absolutely essential that we do it.
2 years ago, there were significant protests in Wellington and elsewhere, and the start of a movement called Hands Off Our Tamariki, after a child was uplifted from Hastings Hospital from a 19-year-old mother by protection officers, or whatever the equivalent is at Oranga Tamariki, social workers, because they feared for that particular child and that particular environment. Did that consequence of that protest have a policy impact upon Oranga Tamariki?
I think it definitely affected the trust of Oranga Tamariki and the perception of Oranga Tamariki, and our organisation saw that and got that feedback immediately, and that was something that Oranga Tamariki had to manage. But I'm of the view we will always need Oranga Tamariki. I don't care what you call it. You can, our organisation has seen the name change 5 times in the time we've existed.
Yeah.
So I don't care what you call it. We will always need a statutory body who can intervene and uplift a child, is my view. However, it is how that is done, and what we need to do is have that early intervention, so hopefully we don't get to that point. But there will always be cases where children have to be uplifted, in my personal view.
Oh, of course there will. I mean, and everybody surely recognises that. Apart from the ideologues and the extremists. The interesting thing about that at the time 2 years ago was that Tracy Martin, who was a former New Zealand First MP, she was the Oranga Tamariki minister. This goes back to 2019. Sorry, goes back to 2019, 4 years ago, not 2 years ago. And she was going to scrap children's teams, or at least she wanted to scrap children's teams, which were seen at that time as the last line of defence for vulnerable children. They'd been launched by National in 2012. Did she actually do that?
Well, children's teams officially didn't exist for some time. They were there, but they weren't implemented the way that everyone believed they were going to be. And the concept of early intervention, and not just Oranga Tamariki working alone on this, but working with communities, that is still debated to this day and still brought up as a really good solution. The problem with Wellington is we get these ideas, like the reports, there's nothing wrong with the recommendations, we just don't implement it. Then we get a new minister, and then we get it called something else, and we get a new strategy. And we get all these changes at the high level, but on the front level, nothing changes. And I have social workers tell me that all the time, that nothing has changed for years at the front line.